Hey, and welcome back to Podcasting for Educators. One of my favorite types of episodes to record are the conversations I get to have with fellow podcasters and listeners of this show. Whether you're thinking of starting a podcast or you already have one, I think it's really motivating to hear about other podcasters' experiences. We can all learn from each other, and it's interesting to hear how every podcaster's story is unique. Today, I have Nicole Sanders on the show to talk about why she started her podcast, Let's Chat Teaching, and how it's fitting into her business, Apple Tree Resources. Nicole is a student in my online course community, the Podcasting for Educators Prep School, so it was really fun to talk to her and hear how things have been going since starting her show back in October. During this conversation, we also ended up talking a lot about the importance of talking about your offers inside of your episodes. And when you hear it, I hope it's an encouragement to you to think about how you could do this in your own show and how doing so is actually really beneficial for your listeners. Nicole is from British Columbia, Canada, and taught in public education for 10 years before leaving the classroom and creating online professional development courses for teachers in the grades 5 to 8 classrooms. Let's go talk to Nicole. Your podcast is a powerful tool that serves your audience and your business. But how do you manage it all, bring in new listeners, and convert those listeners into customers? That's what this show is all about. Welcome to Podcasting for Educators. I'm Sarah Whitaker, classroom teacher turned podcast manager, and I'm here to help you get the most out of your show, all while making an impact on other educators. Hey, Nicole, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we're going to be talking all about your experience with podcasting, which I'm really excited to hear about. But before we jump into the topic of podcasting, tell us a little bit about how you went from a classroom teacher to an online course creator.
Yeah, sure. So like you said, I was a classroom teacher. I taught for about 10 years. And so often when I went to professional development days, the district would throw or the province would throw, there wouldn't be anything very specific that I needed for that term or for that time period. And I found that so frustrating. I specialized in grade 5 to 9, and there just wasn't always something there. And even when I had individual professional development, I would be researching and I would just wish there was like this online course I could take and there'd be something at the end of it I could jump into that was really specific for what I needed. And so that always just kind of sat there in the back of my head, kind of like a gap that was there that I wish I had. And then I just kept teaching. And as I did, actually, I opened a small Teachers Pay Teacher store like many of us do. And I added a couple resources, I think like 30 resources in 6 years or something. So really small. And there would be years in there that I wouldn't work on it at all. I was just too busy teaching. Teaching is such a full-on experience, as you know, and I just couldn't do it. But I always loved when teachers would buy stuff and they'd use it and they'd say, thank you so much for creating this. And I know because I also buy stuff off Teachers Pay Teachers. And so it was such an amazing feeling to help teachers in a career where we can feel so alone sometimes and so undersupported. And so I loved that part of it too. And then in 2021, in April, I think it was, my family and I, we moved from one city to another. And instead of reapplying into the new teaching district, I just sat down with my husband and we talked about what is it that I really wanted to do. And I really wanted to start a business where I could just stand in the gap a little bit and help teachers in the public school classroom. My heart is really believes in public education. And I really have an entrepreneurial side of me as well. And so we just chatted about that. And so in 2021, I started my business, Apple Tree Resources, and I created a course and I just started from there.
I love it. I'm always amazed at teachers who like really go all in on TPT and they're still in the classroom. Like it's so much to manage.
Oh.
It's amazing to me. I don't know how people do it for like long periods of time, do both. So I love that you were able to lean into really growing your business and be able to kind of take a step back from being in the classroom. So what kind of course did you start with? Was it like a big course on lots of different topics, or was it kind of focused on a central topic?
It's a very focused. So for Apple Tree Resources, the target audience is teachers in the grade 5 to 8 classroom. So all the courses are going to be specific for that. And so the first course is called Short Story Writing Made Easy. And it's the process of having students be able to write their own short stories. And so when you take the course, you're able to, once you take the course and it's complete, you get over 100 resources to make it happen like on Monday kind of thing. And so that's what I wanted as a teacher. I wanted to be able to like, let's start on Monday, And so I just wanted to make sure that I was hitting those needs that I felt like I had.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I can relate so much about professional development as a teacher, like sitting there and being like, this is not what I need right now in this moment, which is what's so great about courses is it solves a problem immediately, which is so nice. And I love that so you're 5 to 9.
Grade 5 to 8.
Which I feel like is a really cool niche to be in because I just don't think there's as many resources out there for that grade range.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting because it's like, on the one hand, it's like there is this gap, but it's also like there's nothing there. And so it's like really hard sometimes for teachers to be like, is there anything there? It's my job to get it in front of teachers and be like, hey, there is something here to help you out. There is something here. Because if you don't know it exists, because it hasn't existed. I mean, my job right now, helping teachers with resources and online courses did not exist when I became a teacher. So I find that very exciting, but it's also really, really interesting because teachers in the classroom don't always think to look outside for those people willing to stand in the gap for them and provide them with stuff that's so specific. So it's really exciting, but there's a challenge there as well.
Yeah, for sure. Especially for you as a content creator, because it's like, okay, how do I figure out how to make people more aware of these resources? Yeah. Because same. I mean, when I was a teacher, I had no idea that like online courses were a thing. I didn't know to look for them. A TPT was a place I would always go. I always bought TPT resources, but I didn't know that there was anything beyond that. So is that kind of what led you into starting a podcast? Tell us how you decided to take that next step into starting your own show.
That is exactly what led into starting a podcast. So I myself love podcasts. And when I did start the business, Apple Tree Resources, when I started it, I really, because I was a teacher, I had no experience in the online business, never mind business world. So other than reading business books for years, because that's what I like to geek out on. But so it was a huge learning curve. So those first couple of years were really like getting a domain name, rebranding, because the domain name I had for my store in Teachers Pay Teachers was bought by someone else. And then, so it was a journey. So I renamed the whole business, but that was okay. I needed a fresh start. Went from 30 resources. I think I have 129. I hired a virtual assistant and I started learning and consuming all I could about online business and how to reach people because I knew it wasn't my area of expertise. It's funny because I have one area of expertise, which is like 10 years in the classroom, but it has to be married to this other side, which is online business. And so I knew that I had nothing on one side and I had a lot on the other. And so I knew I needed to like beef up the other side. And so long form content just kept popping up. Like as an online business owner, you need to have long form content because there needs to be somewhere where people can find you, have that know, like, and trust factor, and really be able to connect to you. And just as importantly, people need to find you and they need to hear and they need to know that's actually not a good connection for me. And they go and find someone else. Like that's equally as important because I really do want to help teachers in the classroom. And so if it's not a good fit, then it's not a good fit and that's okay. So I knew I needed long form content and I didn't know, but I learned that, YouTube is a long form content, blogging is a long form content, and podcasting is long form content. And those are the three big ones. And it took me forever to decide any of them because it just made me sick to think about my face on video, my voice on a podcast, getting professional photos done. Like, honestly, that's why it took me so long. Plus, setting up the business gave me a good excuse to wait basically a year and a half. But I finally decided podcasting because I love podcasting and it's so accessible. You can listen to it while you wash dishes or do dinner or fold laundry. And like that, I love that. I think that's really important for us busy teachers and busy human beings. And so I finally bought your course, Podcasting for Educators, prep school. So I bought that because I listened to your podcast and I loved the professionalism that it gave, the quality of sound, the quality of editing, like everything about it was exactly what I was going for. And I had this fear that I was going to start a podcast and the sound would be off and the editing would be terrible. And it wouldn't actually reflect the professionalism of the business I wanted to have. And so it took me a while to find your podcast course, to be honest. And when I did, I bought it and I went through it step by step. And it was amazing. And Sarah didn't tell me to say this, but if you're even thinking about it at all, just buy it. It's worth every penny and more. But it really helped me be able to launch my own podcast and do it myself. Eventually, I will hire someone out, but I actually do want to know the process. I do want to know how this is done. And I want to know, like, when I hire it out, like, are they doing it properly or am I getting ripped off? That sounds terrible. But I want to know all of it. It's my business. And at the end of the day, it falls on my shoulders. And so it was a steep learning curve, but it was like you held my hand all the way through. So I launched my podcast October 2023, and a new podcast episode airs every Tuesday.
Yay! Oh, that's so awesome. I'm so glad that you had a good experience with the prep school. And I remember you posting in the Facebook group, like you were definitely somebody who was taking action right away, which is great to see. And I totally agree with you. I mean, there are so many things in our business that we can outsource, but there's something really powerful in equipping yourself with the knowledge and the skills of how to do these things. And you can always outsource it later so that you know, is this person doing a good job? And this is how I want things to be done. So you can have that set before you ever hire somebody. And even if you do hire somebody, you never know when you might need to take over again or anything like that. Like, you want to know what's going on behind the scenes. So I'm 100% with you there. And I love to hear that this isn't something that a lot of people mention. So it's really cool to hear you talk about, like, the audio quality you wanted from the beginning. You really knew that audio quality was important to you, and it was a reflection on the professionalism of your business. And I couldn't agree more. So when you started learning about, like, editing and stuff, did it end up being easier than you thought it was going to be? Or was it a tough skill to learn?
It was so much easier than I thought it would be. I had built up how to do podcasting, how to edit podcasting in my head to be this incredibly scary thing. And honestly, when you go and look at some of the other courses that are out there, or if you are listening to people who want to edit your podcast for you, sometimes I think it's built up to be this big scary thing so that you hire it out. And so I really did just think it was going to be this crazy expensive. Honestly, even doing the podcasting myself, I thought, okay, this is going to be not as expensive as hiring it out, but it'll probably still cost me. And actually, with the things that you recommend and the different editing software that you recommend, it's basically free. Other than, obviously, you have to buy a professional microphone and that's about it. But honestly, the cost of entry into podcasting is so incredibly low to get a high quality podcast that really astonished me, actually. That was shocking.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So many people think there's, like, so much tech behind it, so much equipment that you have to buy. And you said it perfectly. It really is low entry. Like, you need a mic, you need headphones, you need a computer. And the editing software that I recommend in the prep school is free. So, I mean, it's really not very costly to get started. So I'm glad that you've been able to see that and have had a good experience with that. So tell us, how are things going now that you're about 4 months in? You started in October. I started my podcast in the month of October as well. My favorite month of the year. So love it. How are things going so far?
Yeah, they're going really well. There's an email that you sent out actually with podcast stats that was incredibly helpful. Actually, I just printed it out, I'm not going to lie, because, when you start a podcast, you have no idea, like, yay, I got 100 views. Like, is that good? Is that terrible? Like, and it's like, I know you're not supposed to compare yourself to other people. I get that. But it's also a lonely world when you're an entrepreneur in the closet recording a podcast. And so it's really nice to have. So I've also looked up other stats and things like that just to see Like getting to podcast number 10 is a big deal in podcasting. And that was really encouraging for me because there's nobody there to be like, hey, your podcast's amazing. Like, no, like that's not how it works. You really are talking in a closet and you air it. So I
Yeah.
found that really encouraging and it's going really well. Like I batch my podcast episodes. So I record them and edit them and then I schedule them out in my podcast platform, I guess. Is that how you would say it? But yeah, so I schedule them
Yeah.
out. I use Kajabi. So in Kajabi, I just schedule them out as long as I have them. And I do 6 to 8 at a time. And then I have a virtual assistant who does the show notes for me. And actually, she creates a blog post for it as well. And so,
Nice.
yeah, that's a really nice kind of system we've built. And so I think I have until end of March scheduled out. So that's how I'm able to do this. And also I'm learning to do Facebook ads right now and other things in the business. I just launched another course and that's where I have time to create that other course and to launch things and do other things in the business because I'm batching these. And it's just so possible to do that with the content calendar. You just go for it. And your course tells you how to do that. I find that very helpful. No, it's going
absolutely.
great. Yeah.
Good. That's awesome. And I love your system that you've got set up and that you have some help too, because having some help, especially with show notes, I find that show notes are definitely like people's favorite thing to first hire out when it comes to the podcast, because then you can just kind of be in charge of creating the content, recording it, then you can kind of pass it off. So will you do like 6 to 8 recordings in one sitting?
No, I do it in a 2-week period. I will do 6 to 8 recordings. And then, so I'll record, edit, and then schedule. And then I write the email that goes with that. And then I do another one and I send it immediately to my VA. And so by the end of the 2 weeks, I have 8 recorded and scheduled out, including the emails. And then my VA is just kind of finishing up the back end of it. And then it's done for the next 2 months. So then I have like a 6-week period, 5-week, 6-week period where I can focus on other things in the business.
Yeah, like your course creation. So that's a great system. And I've listened to some of your episodes. They sound amazing. Your sound quality is great. And you keep your episodes like very manageable and not super long. So do you feel like that has helped you to do a lot of this batching by keeping the episodes a little bit shorter?
Yeah, I just don't, I think like being precise in what we're saying is being respectful to the audience. And so when I come up with a topic, I don't want filler. I don't want it to be, I'm just not a filler type person. And so I don't have a lot of anecdotal things. I like listening to episodes of things that are very precise. And so I come up with an idea for an episode, something that resonates with me, that I think would resonate with other people. And then I write very brief ideas. And then I just go and I record it as if I'm talking to a teacher colleague, a teacher down the street, we used to say, but down the hall. And I just keep it that way and not to drag it out if I can help it. And then whatever the time lands. So I don't have like a timer going or anything like that. It's just when it feels done, it's done.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And so how now that you've got a few months under your belt here, how is this podcast fitting into your business?
So right from the beginning was part of the business plan to have that long form content. And so it fits into the business because it's kind of like a funnel and it's at the top of the funnel where it's the broadest audience that can be reached and that where people can find Apple Tree resources, which is me essentially. And there's a lot of really good content and teaching in the podcast itself. And so there's just a lot of value there. And so I really wanted to connect with teachers on all the different levels, like on a free level. And then they might enter in on something from my teacher store, which might be like $2 or $3 American or something like that. And then when they're ready, they might buy an online course. And that's kind of how it works when you have like learning and trusting the people that you're working with. And that's part of my job as an online creator, is creating that trust for people to know that there's actual value in buying these things. Because when earning these dollars, like that counts. That's time that we're putting in. That's not a renewable resource. And so I take that very seriously. And so I understand that people need that free content or long form content of podcasts in order to know if it's a really good fit. on the podcast itself, I do offer freebies or lead magnets, depending on what you want to say. And so people are able to get free resources, even though they're already listening to a free resource, but they get another free resource if they want it. But that enters them into my email list. And then there are times actually that I have an advertisement. I don't always do this, but I actually have recorded mini advertisements for the short story course, but also for my interactive notebooks course. And I put them inside or like in the middle of an episode. Not always, but also if it's relevant, I'll talk about it within the episode itself. But it's not like pushing those things. It's just like, this is here. I'm offering this because if you don't know it's there, you don't know it can help. And so, yeah, the podcast works on all of those levels for my business.
Yeah, I love it. And I agree about when you do any kind of, people call it different things, ad, commercial, some people say. But yeah, when you put those things into your episodes, I think it's important that we do that because it's building awareness around the things that you offer as a business owner.
And people need these. Like people need your course.
Yeah.
I didn't know unless you told me you had that course, right? And it was like, oh, thank God she has this course. I can go and buy this. And so if I ever get nervous, I think, you know what? No, I needed you to say, hey, I have this course I'm offering. And here it is. If it's something that fits for you. And that's all I'm doing too, right? Because it's like, actually, I really need the courses that I create. I really needed it, honestly, as a teacher, and it wasn't there. And the job is hard enough. And so teachers do not have energy, just like online course creators, do not have energy to go and find these things. It's up to us as business owners to be like, hey, it's here for you if this is a good fit. And if it's not, people won't buy it, and that's okay. But if they don't know it's there, they can't buy it.
Oh my gosh, so well said. It's such a good perspective. Like, why are we putting so much time and effort and money into creating these great resources if we're not going to share about them and make people aware of them? And just like you said, like, no harm, no foul. Like, if somebody doesn't want to buy it, if it's not a good fit for them, then that's fine. They can just keep listening to your free podcast that you're putting out or opting into your freebies that you're creating. And that's fine. Like, not everybody's going to buy from you. But you created these things to help people and to give them a solution to a problem that they have. So you got to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. That's really hard though when you come from like when your boss is the government and they pay you every 2 weeks.
Yes.
Like that's a very hard hurdle to get over. But then I just think of the things that I've bought and it's like, I really need this in this course and this and that. And like, thank God someone's talking about it. So it's like, I really try to go through that way of sales because sales can feel so icky, just the name of it. And it's like, actually it's offers. And the only thing I'm creating are things that I needed or have used. And so we're actually helping and standing in the gap by doing that. But the only way I can do that is if I actually make some money in it so that I don't have to go back and get another job, right? And so there is this kind of reciprocity in it and a reality in it too, right?
Yes, definitely. I told this story on a recent podcast episode that I think had already aired, but like when I first started my online business, I had just like all of us, I had no idea what I was doing. And I bought the very first course I ever bought was one that I heard on a podcast because they were talking about it on their podcast and they had students on who had shared their success with it. And I was so grateful for that. Like I probably would not be where I am in business today if I never bought that course and if I never heard about it on the podcast. So yeah, it's so important. I think it's something that a lot of podcasters tell me is like, I know I need to be talking about my offers more on my podcast, but it's something that I really struggle with. And I do think that creating those ads or commercials is a really good way to dip your toes in it because it's something that you can pre-record and you can kind of insert it into your episodes and it feels a little bit separate from your episode and that might feel a little bit easier for people. But I love what you said you're doing, which is you're creating those, but then you're also organically talking about these things in your episode content as well, which I think is super effective.
Yeah, I agree. There's a really big Teachers Pay Teachers podcast that actually shut down because she said that she wasn't very good at doing the advertising and she wasn't making enough money on the business side of Teachers Pay Teachers. So she has a store. So she actually shut it down so she could focus on her store more. And she did say, because she is uncomfortable with the selling of the courses that she had. And I had listened to her podcast for a year and a half and I had no idea she had courses. And it was like, oh, wow. That was a good wake up call for me.
Oh my
She
gosh.
couldn't,
Yeah.
because like it's so much, like, yes, you can batch podcasting, but the reality is it's also time, right?
Yeah.
And so that time needs to count in the business, and it does for that know, like, and trust factor and for that educational piece. And I love that part of it, but we just need to get over that. And actually, I agree with you completely. I have that separate ad and I put it in, and when I'm editing it and I add it in, I feel nothing about it because it's just a piece
Yeah.
of podcast that goes
You're
in
like,
there.
it's already done. I already did it. I don't have to think about it.
Exactly, exactly. And so that is actually how I started. Now I talk about it more freely because I'm more comfortable with it. But that's absolutely how I started. I did a separate piece I put in there, and that really helps do like incremental things at a time. But yeah, that
Yeah.
was very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And, if you're listening and you're like, I don't know if I'm talking about my things enough, send a few episodes to a friend and have them listen to it and get their perspective and their feedback on like, am I talking about my offers? Do you know like what kinds of things are available to you to buy? It's really interesting to get that perspective. Like even for myself, I just had an episode go live and I had one of my clients reach out to me and she was like, I couldn't believe that you didn't talk about this thing that you have in that episode because it was the perfect fit. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Like it had escaped my mind. I wasn't thinking about it in that way. So it's nice to get other people's perspective and feedback on the actual content of your episodes.
Mm-hmm. I never want to feel salesy, right? Like it always feels so icky.
Right.
But it's like, you know what? That's not where the heart is. Like I'm not a salesy person. And so to fear being salesy is actually kind of false because it's just not who I am. And that's not what I don't want to sell products to people who don't want them. Like that's no thanks. So I just,
Right.
yeah, I just need to
Yeah.
get over that, my own mind hurdle on that. So that's a big one though. That's a big one for sure.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're doing a great job with that and even just being aware of it like when you're planning out your episode content, I think that's a huge piece too. And something that people struggle with is like when you're planning your episodes, be thinking about, okay, what resources do I have that this connects with? What courses do I have that this content connects with so that you can really align your content with the things that you have available for people so that it feels a little bit more seamless and it feels a little bit more organic when you talk about it and it doesn't feel like selling.
Yeah, and the reality is with teachers, like they can create their own resources, right? Like we've been doing that in Word. When I first started teaching, I used Word and it was friggin' hard. And, and so sometimes when I don't very often talk about my Apple Tree resources on Teachers Pay Teachers resources. But when I do, it's like, sometimes it's like, hey, just go check out the resource to see how it has been created because you can create it on your own. But we as teachers know creating something like that is like 30, 40 hours, right? Like if you're going to create something, or I could just buy it for $3, like, and it is a choice. Like teachers are welcome to spend that time creating their resources, but it's not worth their dollar, honestly. Like, but if that's what they choose to do, that's a respectable choice. And so sometimes it's even just looking at the outline of what it is to see how they want to create it themselves. And that's fine too. I'm totally fine with teachers doing that. But if they want to save time, then they can buy it too. There are just so many options within the paid structure that people can take advantage of it for whatever works for them. And that feels good on my end too.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're just giving your audience options and they can make that decision for themselves. Don't make that decision for them by not sharing about your things. Let them choose for themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Awesome. Nicole, this has been amazing. I've loved hearing about your journey so far. I mean, I know you're about 4 months in, but I feel like you're already doing so much and just congratulations on like getting started and having things going so well so far for you.
Well, thank you so much. It was a huge mental hurdle, was probably the biggest part actually. And so it's like, I just celebrate getting those professional photos done. Celebrate. Starting a podcast is huge. I actually took myself out for a drink. Congratulations, Nicole.
Good.
Here is your champagne. It was a big hurdle. And now it's like so comfortable to go in and record a podcast and edit it and put it on the scheduler. Like it's part of what I love to do. And it becomes comfortable way faster than I thought it would. And that's great because I needed it too. And it really did.
Yes, I hear this so much. Like everybody sits on the idea for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then I mean the only way like it's a new skill. It's something that's going to feel uncomfortable at first, but the only way it's going to feel more comfortable is to just get started and try it out, and it's going to get easier day by day by day by day.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's fun. It sounds like you're
is.
having fun doing it. I know for me it's like such a fun piece of my business.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yes. Especially for teachers, because we public speak for a living.
Yeah, exactly. This is what we do. We can get behind a mic and talk.
That's right.
Well, tell us, Nicole, where people can find your podcast online, where they can find you online if they want to connect after listening today.
So the podcast is called Let's Chat Teaching, and you can get that anywhere you listen. And otherwise, you can go to appletreeresources.com, and the podcast's there, courses are there, all the stuff is there.
Awesome. We will put all of that in the show notes. And Nicole, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Nicole for joining us in this episode. If you want to start your podcast by this summer or already have a show but need to tighten up your systems, come join us in the Podcasting for Educators Prep School. It's on sale this week through April 7th with code APRILFLASH. You can grab that code, learn more about everything that's included, and join the prep school by clicking the link in the show notes for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. To keep this conversation going, connect with me on Instagram at Podcasting for Educators. I'm always looking for an excuse to talk about podcasting. If you're looking for support in launching, managing, or growing your podcast, check out my online course, the Podcasting for Educators Prep School, at podcastingforeducators.com/prep school. I'll see you here next time.